I'm just going to sit right over here.
Sure enough, the next day we looked out the window and here comes Margaret walking, you know, up there. And she comes up in front of the whole study room area. And she says, she up in front and she says, Mr. Stinchfield, she says, I'll mend the shirts. You make my son behave. And off she went.
I think that's priceless. It reminded me of our grandmother.
Yeah, Doris would have been.
Doris would have said exactly the same thing.
Back in those days, you better mind the principal.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Funny how some of these things just stay with you.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
Well, my family was the Crunhams. I don't know if you knew any of them.
Who?
The Crunhams?
Oh, Amy?
Yeah, that was my grandmother.
Amy McCurnham.
Yes, yep.
Good, good. I can remember she and Paul, I mean, she and who ran the hardware store?
George Pullen?
George Pullen.
Pullen.
Yeah.
And we had won the tournament in Milo, and we'd gotten the
Basketball?
award as champions of the county. And I was up in the balcony there. I don't think I was more than 16 maybe. And here's George and Amy out in the after they got the final basket, and we'd won the game, and that was it. And they're dancing around and around and around again.
Yeah, my grandmother loved basketball right up until she died, basically.
His father was the
Was
same way.
Annie her sister?
No, she only had two brothers, Elmer and William.
Well, Annie, who was Annie? She came and stayed at Winters, I think. She used to live down there, but there at the at that place that Alva Perkins bought. And I understood she wintered with. She stayed there all summer by herself. She was, and I believe that.
Well, Lila and Edgar were still at home.
She was familiar with it anyway.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, you folks.
He'll go off on a tangent.
That's all right. That's what we want, are nice stories, family stories.
Yeah. Got plenty of those.
I'll try to stay within what's of a particular interest if I can. I think it's so, I can't remember some of the things.
You remember much better than I do, I think.
Dad has a very good memory.
Very detailed.
Better than all of us combined.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he remembers a lot of detail stuff too that's astounding. So,
You ready?
Yep. Yep, this is all.
Okay, Dad.
Everything.
Well, we're talking today with Kenneth Simpson, who now lives in Connecticut.
No, he's in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, but he grew up in Monson. Graduated in 1940. And we'd like to start out with where and what date were you born?
Born in Greenville, Maine, October 5th, 1921. Old Dr. Pritham. And my father was from Shirley, Maine. His name was Clifton Simpson. My mother was from Abbott, Maine. Her name was Doris Dutton. And of course, Doris Dutton Simpson. And that's where I was born. Up until I was about 5 years old, they lived in Shirley. My father was from Shirley Mills. He was, his father was Mark Simpson. He was a blacksmith that had come in from Aroostook County to work for the Stacy's, a Shirley Lumber Company. The Stacy's ran those mills there. The Mark Simpson married Anna Mitchell as his second wife. His first wife had died, and while they were in Shirley, when he'd moved in from Aroostook County. He came down from Washington, Maine, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And Anna eventually bought the Gilbert lot in Mons. It was known as the Gilbert, built by Aaron, what was Gilbert's first name?
A.C. Gilbert.
Yeah.
Alna Gilbert.
AC?
Yeah, it could have been Albert or something like that.
Yeah, Alna.
Alna.
Yeah. And they ran that building there, that big building.
Yes.
It had a false front on it most
Yes.
days. He had a garage there next to Brown's store. And my father, Clifton Simpson, well, we had moved into Monson when I was about 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We lived down near, down on the road toward Elliotsville, and what became the old Morris Copeland was the last guy I knew that lived there.
Mm-hmm.
But and then it was right across from the Worries. They were Finnish family from Russia. He had been in the rumor was anyway, he'd been in the Tsar's bodyguard. And when the Bolshevik Revolution occurred, of course, he had to flee for his life, I guess. But that's another story. So,
That's okay. We were interested in these.
but
There's lots of them.
oh God, it goes on and on.
You might have to
I
edit
was
it.
5 years old, and they put me in the kindergarten. Marjorie LeClaire was
Mine too.
We also had her. Yes.
Did you have Marge?
Yes.
We both knew her too. They moved down to Massachusetts and we were friends with them.
Huh.
And from there on, it went, you know. Vivian Bray was my second grade teacher. Dear old sweet.
He's got a memory like
Esther Pennington,
Yeah,
God
that's
bless
true.
her. She was my third teacher. My fourth year's teacher was Amanda Matson. Then Bernice Fogg.
Mm-hmm.
All of these, I don't know, they ring bells with you.
Oh,
We had 3 out of those teachers that you mentioned. Yeah.
And then I ended up at the academy, of course, and Philip Stinchfield was the headmaster up until he left and went to Connecticut. I understand he had a job down there that he took for a while. And then there was Lyndon Christie that came in from, and he was the principal of the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been up to 1940. I graduated under Lyndon Christie. And God knows what happened after that.
I brought this article that will help some of that.
So when you were 5, you moved on the Elliotsville Road. And then did you move into town after that?
That's
When
right.
you were a little older?
What happened was Arthur Dutton, who was my grandfather, he used to be a farmer down in on the road to in Abbott, on the road to Bingham, Kingsfield, and he sold out there and came up. He worked for the state off and on as a road commissioner. In fact, he built a lot of that road that ran from Greenville Junction to Rockwood. There was no road in the around 1936, I think, that he was. I was up there as a kid, stayed with him in a tent. But at any rate, that was my grandfather there. And my mother and father, Doris Dutton Simpson, in the meantime, they purchased the house that's next to the Congregational Church.
Okay.
Between
So there.
the two of them. That is, Arthur Dutton, my grandfather, who lived upstairs, and they turned that into an apartment, and downstairs is where we lived. And I lived in that house there until I left town when I was 19 years old. And
Now, Dad, that was the original switchboard location.
oh yeah, they had the town switchboard, in that house in those days.
Grandmother was an Ernestine.
In fact, I learned how to run the thing.
Did you? Yeah.
Old Fred Crane owned half the town in those days.
Yes, he did.
And he owned the Portland Monson. No, he didn't own the Portland Monson. He owned the Monson Main Slate Company, and that eventually became after he died, his wife sold that out, and there was a man that moved into town. What the heck was his name? He formed the Moosehead Furniture.
Johnson?
Oh,
John Durham.
Durham.
Yep. And Talford, his
Yeah.
brother.
And I had left town by then,
Yes.
but I kept coming back once in a while, and I ended up picking up some property over in Elliotsville. I purchased there was 160 acres there that I owned for a while, right on Greenwood Pond. And I hung on to that land for a long time. I bought that from a man named, first of all, it was Scott Coombs, he was called. Coombs came there and stayed in the house with us for years. He was former chief of police in Bergenfield, New Jersey, and he used to come summers, but he had originally been born in Greenville. And he and his daughter at any rate, during the war, he came down to Connecticut, and he was the head of guards at the Electric Boat Company in Groton. in those days. And then that was where the atomic submarine was. In fact, I got a ticket that he gave my mother to attend the ceremony when that boat keel was being laid, and Harry Truman was there as spoke, and I don't know, did I bring that ticket? I found it in her stuff anyway.
Yeah. That was for the Nautilus, Dad. The atomic submarine.
But I'm
Nautilus.
off my subject.
So,
on the phone, on the telephone company, do you remember the person who started the telephone company was Sarah Poole? Do you remember her? Yeah, she was my grandfather's brother's widow.
Now they moved that, you know, down in Orrin Rice's old barber shop.
yes.
Yeah.
They moved it from our house when my mother decided to leave this town and come down to Connecticut with us.
And what year was that? Approximately. Must have been.
Well, let's see, I'd been working at Pratt & Whitney about a year, I guess, when both she and my father came down, and she went to work at a company called Electromotive Manufacturing Company, and she worked in the inspection department for them. They made capacitors for radio, that kind of thing.
So it must have been the early 1940s.
That was in the early 1940s. Had the war. When was Pearl Harbor? That was
41, December 41. Yeah.
And they came down. I think we were at war.
So that's when they changed the telephone company over to the barbershop building.
Yeah.
It was in the early 40s.
It was in Orrin Rice's old barber shop.
Yeah, yeah. Who else worked at the phone company at your house besides your mother and yourself?
Jean Bickford's wife.
Eva.
Eva Bickford. Crane had made an arrangement with my mother to pay us so much a month to have that telephone switchboard there, and we set up a little office and built a doorway in and so forth. In fact, that doorway's still on that house. I looked at it yesterday, where they used to go in and out. And we used to have an old crank telephone hanging up there on the wall, and somebody that needed to call somewhere, they always would come over and come up and go ahead. And then, of course, the Hescocks had another phone down in their drugstore. Fred and Roy Hescock.
Was that free for people to use, or did they have to pay?
Oh, we kept a little ticket, and we sent it into Crane's office down there by the railroad station every time that people would use the telephone.
Do you want cream? There's cream right there.
Thank you.
Then I saw that your father had an ice business.
That's true. He had an ice house over there. This must have been, let's see, before we had refrigeration. And the whole town was on ice.
So where was the ice house located?
It was located over by where the Atkinsons lived. Oh, let's see. you know, you go through the Narrows. You go off to the left down there to where there was a family called Atkinson. They lived down in there, and he got a piece of land from a lady down in Corinna or someplace that gave him permission to build this huge ice house. And between he and his father, in the meantime, of course, as I said, my grandfather Simpson had bought that block and they moved down here. Of course, he was a blacksmith and he was also a handyman in a lot of mechanics. And they rigged up a sluice thing that went from that ice house was right side the water, come right down into the water, the sluice thing, and they had one of them old-fashioned engines that
Oh yeah.
and it would, they had a chain thing that went up over the pulleys and down into the pond, and it had these things hooked in the chain that, and they'd cut the ice, they cut it in big chunks, they'd push it into that chain and start the engine, and then up she'd go into the ice, and they kept building and building and building until they filled that whole dam out. About the size of, twice the size of that house over there, that ice house.
Is that
big?
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there any pictures of that anywhere?
He sold it to Class Sergeant. Sold the whole ice business to Class Sergeant.
Was that building in back of P.W. Knight's store?
Where was the building, Dad?
Up past the Narrows, right?
Yeah,
It was past the Narrows.
Narrows.
yeah, no, it was up on, well, where, you remember where the bandstand used to stay?
Yes.
Before they moved it up
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
It was down beyond that bandstand, down there on the pond, on the lake.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, it was way out there.
Yeah. That's where the old hotel was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, 'cause that was gone at that time.
Yeah, gone. I think, I believe that Stewart painted a picture of that hotel.
Not that we've seen, but must be somebody has it.
Yeah, Seth Stewart, I think his name was.
Yes.
And then there was Walter Stewart,
Yes.
his son.
Yeah. So did your father deliver ice, or did people have to come there and get it?
All summer,
He would deliver it.
yeah. He had ice, he delivered, everybody had an ice box. And he had a Ford truck, and he had a thing on the back tipped down, and he load that up with ice, and he and in fact he's some of the men, of course, Brown. They had their own ice houses back of the stores, a lot of them. But they gave them up, and Dad took over.
Oh, wow.
And he would, I know with Cad Brown and Arthur Brown, that was a big customer of his. He had to keep them, and they kept their meat. And that's how they kept the meat.
Yeah. Do you remember the Bray, W.A. Bray store?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were they a customer too, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a nice house down in back there, with Arthur Bray was running that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't bother anymore. He bought ice from my father.
Yeah.
He had a good business.
Yes, he did, didn't he? How long did he do that? How many years?
Well, he and his father, Mark, they got They kept it up, oh, until he sold it. He sold it to Claire. What happened is that refrigeration came in, and the ice business began to decline.
Mm-hmm.
This must have been 1938, 39, 40, somewhere
Then
in
he
there.
went down with you then, after that, right?
Yeah, and he got out of the business, and Claire took it over, and he kept running it for a while, I guess, and then he too had to give it all up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to that old ice house. Somebody must have torn it down or something.
Did they use sawdust in the ice house for insulation?
They did.
Yeah.
They got sawdust from the mill, right behind the GAR hall.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Davis owned the mill at that time.
No, I don't think it was Harry.
No,
Didn't Crane own that too?
he may have. Harry
Yeah.
Davis eventually owned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Harry Davis own that to start with? I wonder.
I don't know. He owned it at one
I
time.
don't know, but Harry was into a lot of things.
Yes,
He was the local entrepreneur from the South.
he was.
He was.
Did
He
he
was a
have-
character.
He was a character.
You got a good story about him, Dad? Can you have
Oh
some fun
God,
stories?
yes.
Probably lots.
Anyhow, well, I'm off the subject.
That's
now.
all right. We're interested in Harry Davis.
Well, Harry, of course, you know Harry came from over in Elliottsville. His father,
Yes.
what the heck was his name?
Do you remember?
William,
Yeah.
is it? Is it?
William?
Anyhow, he sent Harry down to them. And of course, here again is another story. It's probably not true.
Those are even better.
They are good. Yeah.
That's got a lot of untrue stories.
Harrison Davis, his
Yes.
name was.
That's
That's
right.
correct. That's
The
right.
goddamnest character you ever saw.
Why?
one?
What about him?
Harrison or Harry?
Which one?
That's great.
Anyhow, this is probably not true, but he didn't have much respect for his son Harry.
Oh dear.
And the story goes that he sent him down to the University of Maine. And the story went that, when he came back, he said, "You know my son Harry, he was a damn fool." And he sent him down to Maine, and they trained him, and he came back, now he's a proper damn fool.
Uh-oh. you can bleep.
But that may not
Oh,
be
no.
true. That was,
There's family around somewhere.
anyhow, Harry had he had that orchard, you know, the Shayla Matthews. There was a huge orchard there.
Yes.
And of course, they made some beautiful apples in those days. Oh God, they were wonderful. The Macintosh was just I don't know what they've done to the Macintosh apple, but it doesn't taste like those things. But Harry would come time to pick those apples. And he looked after that orchard. He did a good job too. Shayla Matthews, Alden Gall. Oh God, on we go.
Alden Sprague? You
Huh?
Alden Sprague? Is that who you remember?
Well, Alden Garland, you know, the Garlands,
Oh, Garland. Okay.
they owned that place on the corner there that, well, I think, who was it that married George Pullen's daughter?
Yes. Gordon Hall.
Huh?
Gordon Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they moved into that place.
Yes.
That belonged to, Alden came there summers for quite a while, but he never really lived here full. But I guess that was where he was born or something. I don't know. They were always called it the Garland place.
Yeah.
So Harry also had maple syrup. He used to do maple syrup in the spring.
Maple syrup?
Yes, Harry did.
Oh, you're talking about
Harry
Harry.
Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, he had, he made, made maple, no, I'm talking about spruce gum, I'm sorry.
Yes, and he had the spruce gum business. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a, okay, yeah, that's the one time I ever saw him really upset. They owned a lot of property. I mean, his father did. He was the biggest property owner in Elliottsville.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some beautiful sugar maples planted along the road that he tapped every year. Well, the state came in and decided to widen the road.
Oh.
And they started cutting down his saprick, he called it. He was upset too, boy. He come into the office door, you know, and he gets on that telephone, and I'll give him credit. He got to the guy in Augusta, and by God, they stopped that.
Good for him.
Yeah.
He might have been a little guy, but
He knew where to go.
You know, his family still owns that land in there.
Do they?
Hundreds
Yes.
and hundreds of acres, and
Yeah.
they tap the maples every year.
Oh, wow.
Do they?
Yes.
We'll have to get some, Dad.
it's nice to know, isn't it? That it continues on.
Right.
Harry would have been proud.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lloyd Kelly took over one of the orchards over there. Yeah.
That was the Davis Orchard.
Yeah.
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 Faith Davis? Or
Lloyd was
No.
in the.
they not related?
She was David's son.
Oh God!
It's gonna be a good one.
You got a good one, Dad? What?
Back at the high school. I mean, back at the academy. I don't know what Lloyd was doing, but Stinchville, of course, had left, and Lyndon Christie was now the principal. And I think I was a junior or a senior, and we all sat in different areas as we went to, in the big assembly room. And I was back here somewhere, and I guess Lloyd was down there, either a freshman or a sophomore, Lloyd Kelly. And he was acting up or something. And all at once I see Lyndon Christie. He's getting madder by the minute because Lloyd's disturbing the other kids around him, and up he jumps. This is the principal. Up he jumps, and he comes over, and he picked Lloyd up And he
Shirt?
suddenly realized that Lloyd's got glasses on, so he carefully removes his glasses and looks at it out, and he goes, "What?"
Right across his. And then what happened, Dad? He start crying? No. It just shocked him, probably.
You didn't mess around in Monson Academy, did you?
No, they weren't tearing your shirt. They're whacking you over the head. Whacking you over the face. That's funny.
I miss a lot of things.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. It's wonderful that you can remember them all, though. You have your memories.
He
And,
does.
you know, and there are a lot of people that don't have that, so
Mm-hmm.
it's good that you have your memories.
Yeah.
Well, can we go back to Harry Davis and the spruce gum business? Do you remember that? Did you ever work there, or did you ever?
No, but I nosy me, you know, I walked in one time. I must have been about 16, 17, 18, or in there, I don't know. And Harry had about 2 or 3 women working in there, in that old house upstairs, just before you go over down to the pit.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this spruce gum that he'd had people out all over the place gathering. You know, you go to a spruce tree and you have to get that sap, but it sets up and gets hard. You can cut it out, and each little piece had to be cleaned, and they cleaned it, and then they put it through